All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome back to Everything College Football Podcast. Davey Nick here. We're doing our preview and prediction for Clemson versus Duke, headlining Week 1 on a Monday night. Tigers 13-point favorites. Total set at 55, 8 p.m. Eastern Time on ESPN. Live from Wallace Wade Stadium in Durham, North Carolina. Look at the Clemson offense. Obviously, there's a lot of moving pieces here. Cade Klubnik stepping into his second career start. His efficiency and plus territory was absolutely horrid against Tennessee. They were like 8 times, I think they were across the 50, and they only scored like twice or something like that. Garrett Riley, though, he comes over to try and implement a fast-paced, up-tempo offense with some speed and some more spacing. And the recruiting on this side of the ball, Nick, is something we've been highly critical of the last 2 years. Obviously, they're starting to get back in tune a little bit in this upcoming cycle, but for what they have in the present, it's not very good. Antonio Williams was a true freshman last year. Really had to showcase his good awareness to get open. Great concentration in tight windows. He ended up being their top pass catcher despite how young he is. Bo Collins really good at tracking the ball downfield. Maybe a freshman and Noble Johnson gets involved this year. He should provide some more good speed. I like Jake Bringstool. He's good at getting first downs. Adam Randall's a talented player. I know some of the fans are high on. But in terms of overall talent, Nick, this is just not a great offense. This air raid, so, they're hoping it can come and, implement some more spacing to help, alleviate the pressure of not having as much talent. But going against this 4-2-5 defense of Mike Elko, scheming is going to be something that I know they're, hoping can be an advantage for them, that being the Blue Devils on this side of the ball. What do you expect from this passing attack this year? Because again, well, really in this game, because Klubnik, again, only second career start coming on the road here, it's probably going to be rowdy there in Durham. What are the expectations?
Klubnik has all the talent in the world. He steps up here into this game and going to try and take the reins. We know he's a really talented quarterback, obviously a five-star player coming in. Did not look great during his starts against Tennessee in the Orange Bowl. And now he steps up and has an opportunity here. He's going to pick apart a defense that has some weaknesses, especially, some portion of the secondary is a little weak for this Duke defense as well as the linebacking core. Klubnik's got all the talent in the world. He's a very superstar quarterback. I just worry about the receiving core around him in the running back room. I don't know if he has exactly enough talent around him to really excel at this level. He needs to work on his decision making, be more focused in the pocket, keep those feet steady. I think he can certainly do it, but I think he's going to have trouble here against this Duke defense that does have some solid players.
I think this is a pretty solid backfield. It's not one of the top 10 duos in CFB, but Will Shipley, a near 1,200-yard rusher last year, also had 15 touchdowns. This guy's fun to watch. A physical specimen, always has some moves, it seems, in the arsenal to break free. Film off ahead over 500 yards and less than 100 touches and 4 scores. So this is a nice 1-2 punch here. Klubnik, we'll see what he can offer as a runner as well. They certainly did a pretty good job last year on the ground game, nearly 180 yards. And Garrett Riley's offense features a slashing running game. And I think Will Shipley, he's certainly going to be a big lead in that. So we'll see how these guys get involved. But they certainly had their struggles at 90 rushing yards against Syracuse, only 68 against North Carolina. They got completely stonewalled in that one. And the only games they really seem to strive, be successful in when it comes to running the ball was against poor opponents against the run. So this is certainly something you're going to monitor going into this game. Duke has a great defensive line. The offensive line for Clemson, though, it's not a great unit. Travis Lee steps into, a role here. Hasn't seen the field much over the last 2 years. A guy with some nice balance, as a former 5-star. Will Putnam played 1,000 snaps last year at center. It was quality for them. Blake Miller was a good run blocker. He's probably going to be the left tackle this year. He had 10 penalties, though, so certainly needs to improve the discipline. Walker Parks, Marcus Tate. These guys were liabilities last year. Average players overall. They all do have good size, though. Everyone's 315 or above. That's one thing they have going for them, and a bit of experience. But this offensive line, it's never been great at Clemson. It's not good this year. I think on the interior, they're at a massive disadvantage this season.
They certainly are at a disadvantage. Will Putnam's a good player. Walker Parks is a solid player as well. These guys are just a little undersized and just don't really quite live up to expectations. They do have some size on the exterior, but the interior concerns you a lot. Tristan Lee is a good player. Blake Miller was a true freshman last year. He steps up as a sophomore. Can he be involved early and be a good pass blocking? I'm worried about this unit, certainly. I think they lack the depth that they need.
Yeah, they certainly have a lot of inconsistencies on this offense. Now you input this new scheme, and you don't exactly need great talent to run the air raid by any means, but this is certainly something that's going to be very concerning. This team only had 8 completions against South Carolina, and that loss there, and I think one of them was like a 40-yard or so. Just flat out embarrassing at times was this passing attack under DJ Uyunglele, and obviously expect him to be better under Cade, but he still is a young player. He's going to have to come into his own. This is going to be a tough environment for him. What's the expectation here? Just one last time for this entire offense in this specific game, Nick, because it could be either a lot of great or a lot of bad, or do you think it'll just be a mix of some good and some ugly?
Certainly a boomer bust opportunity here with Garrett Riley coaching his first game, the air raid offense. I just worry about the offensive weapons. I don't think they have enough in this game. Guys like Bo Collins, Antonio Williams have to step up. Will Shipley's a great back. I want to see what his usage is going to be like. He was great on the ground last year. How much will he be used this year? Film Off was also a pretty good back. I worry, though, about this offense. I think they're going to struggle here in this game. They're going to find themselves in tough situations where they're behind the sticks and have to go through the air very quickly. I don't know if Riley's going to draw up a great game plan here. He's a very good coach, but he's working with a whole new offense here, a whole new team that's certainly lacking the talent compared to the TCU team last year. I'm a little concerned about this offense for this game.
Looking at the Duke offense, the Blue Devils led by Kevin Johns put up a pretty resilient effort last year, 32nd in points per game, 44th in total yards, showcasing pretty optimal balance. Riley Leonard, the quarterback's certainly not getting enough love at this moment in time, but he is a true dual threat player with some good acceleration and speed as a runner. Nice breakaway player, has good vision, good movements in the pocket. Has really showcased some good touch. He did good work as a deep ball thrower as well. Jalen Calhoun, a slot magician who's been around forever, it seems. He's great at getting open in the middle of the field. Very effective after the catch as well. Veteran leader there, Jordan Moore, an ex-QB, utilized a lot to the boundary and underneath. He's really good in the open field. Doesn't have much route running, though. Really, I think this year he probably developed his route tree a good bit, so that's something I'm going to watch. Only one drop last year for him. Nicky Dahlman at tight end, 21 grabs and 4 touchdowns. Eli Pancole, a veteran. Shamar Hagans. The top 5 wide receivers as a whole are all back for this offense. I think this passing attack, they're going against a really good secondary, Nick. I'm very excited for them, though. This is an offense that has plenty of veterans. They have, all kinds of versatility, especially in that backfield I'll allude to in a minute. But Riley Leonard, a complete game breaker here at quarterback. I think he's going to be even better this season. He's going to have to be big here if they want to pull off an upset.
Certainly going to need to see a lot out of Riley Leonard here. I think he's a very talented back. I think people are starting to finally catch on him. I've seen some buzz about him for the draft potentially next year. He's so talented, just absolutely incredibly talented quarterback that has high expectations here for this Duke offense to lead this. I think he's a game changer, very talented with his feet, very good in the pocket. I'm excited to see what we can do this year.
Yeah, they have a deep backfield as well. Plenty of options here. Jordan Waters, 566 yards, 8 scores. Jaquez Moore had a few less touches, 500 plus for him, though, 6.3 yards per carry, and another 480 for Jalen Coleman. They have plenty of guys here they can get involved in this backfield. And then Riley Leonard was the team's leading rusher ahead of them. So plenty of efficiency, nice versatility here. They're going to have to find a way to get them involved, though, because yards on the ground are going to be hard to find. Last year, this ground game at times were really clicking. They had a 3-game stretch last year where they put up 4 they had 4 touchdowns in all 3 games. You know what I mean? So they scored 31 times on the ground last year. But there's games like, against Pittsburgh, they only had 63 yards on the ground, ended up losing that game by a couple of points. When this run game struggles, they only had 142 and no scores against Georgia Tech, lost by 3. So even though when they do struggle, Nick, they still only lose by a couple of points. They're still in these games, so it's not the end of the world for this offense. But they need to use these backs. They're talented. Want to see them try to incorporate them in a variety of different ways here, because running against this Tiger front is certainly going to be hard. Even with Graham Barton at left tackle, still yards will be tough. What's the game plan here for Kevin Johns?
Jordan Waters is a very good back. Jaquez Moore involved. Jalen Coleman could be involved as well. There are some talented pieces running back room. This wide receiver room is also very talented. Jordan Moore is a good player. Eli Pancole, Jalen Calhoun, good player at the wide receivers. Why? They have some deep pieces here, some nice depth. I think they are going to go through the air early and often. They do have a versatile running back room that can be used. The offensive line is elite. Very nice, tough unit. So I think they can balance the run and the pass early on. They're going to try and attack this Clemson defense in multiple different ways and try and wear them down.
Yeah, Barton, he's one of the nation's top tackles, powerful punch, great in the run game. The rest of the offensive line, though, is a bit of a mystery. Ben Hotnick from Princeton was a good player, especially as a pass blocker. Might get him involved this year at guard. Jake Cornerbrook, 2K snaps in 4 years at Stanford. Maybe he'll get started into the lineup. Justin Pickett was a sound run blocker. Jacob Monk at center, he's a veteran. He might be forced out of the lineup here, though. The rest of this offensive line is really not as good as that guy at left tackle right there, Maurice McIntyre. I know he's a veteran they have on that left side as well, so that's certainly the way they're going to be leaning. A lot of maybe outside zone runs to the left. Those guys right there, they're going to be leaning on them all night long.
I think this is certainly a unit that has some question marks, but they are a talented unit nonetheless. Barton's a very good player. Ben Hotnick coming from Princeton could be exciting. Justin Pickett as well. Jacob Monk's a very experienced player. Maurice McIntyre, another good player on the interior that has some experience as a graduate player. This is a unit that has some nice experience, and they're a solid size.
Look at the Clemson defense. They took a bit of a step back last year with Brent Venables' departure, but I don't think that has anything to do with how good this defensive line will do, regardless of who the coordinator is. These guys are going to eat. Peter Woods, a player really high on, a true freshman, has some nice versatility. Might need him a little bit early on this year, as depth may be a bit of an issue. Ruka Horahoro, good penetrator, great first step. He really slants in the creases very well. Tyler Devis, strong balance of power and athleticism. He's great at pushing gaps. You have a veteran pass rusher in Xavier Thomas. Hasn't shown much versatility, but he's going to be a third down asset versus the pass. They might even get him involved as a run a little bit. This Clemson defensive line, still as good as ever. Certainly not as good as last year. Brian Brissy departing. And what's his name? Miles Murphy as well. He's gone. Trent Simpson at linebacker. He doesn't have the speed coming off the edge. I don't see much fall off, though, even with all those losses, Nick. That's just how good they are up front on this side of the ball. Wes Goodwin, I think he's really going to start coming into his own here this season. It's going to start with them boys up front.
This is a very good unit that has some nice, very strong talent on the defensive line. Justin Maskell is a great player. Tyler Devis is a very good nose tackle. Rook Arroyo is a very good player. Defensive tackle Xavier Thomas, another great experience. These guys are all graduate seniors that are returning. They also had Peter Woods, a true freshman who was a 5-star out of high school. I saw him play in high school. Talented player, defensive tackle. He can be involved early on as well. There's a great rotational pieces here. This defensive line is incredible. They're going to give Riley Leonard some trouble early on, certainly.
Yeah, this run defense last year was flat out elite. They only gave up 55 yards against South Carolina, 30 against Miami the week prior to that. They absolutely eaten up against Notre Dame. They gave up 263, 200+ the week prior to Florida State. So even though for the most part they're great all year long, only 3.2 yards per attempt allowed, they certainly had times where they're a little bit less than stellar. I think Duke can certainly provide that same presence just with the versatility they have in the backfield and at quarterback. The offensive line, though, I don't think is really going to have much of an edge here. Behind that defensive line, though, the nation's top linebacking duo, Jeremiah Trotter, Barrett Carter, and these guys were two top 50 recruits in their respective class. Everyone knew they were getting to go last year. They wanted to see how they would do, and they performed, I think, even higher than expectations. Carter, his athleticism allows him to cover ground in coverage. He lined up in the slot for 331 snaps. This is a Brett Venables type player, has great versatility, nice nimbleness, has bad intentions in tracking a ball carrier, elite player there. And Schroeder's even better. He showcased some good eyes in coverage, was very effective on stunts, good play recognition. This team doesn't exactly have the powerful edge rushers, coming into this season, I would say, even though they do have the veterans in Thomas and Massacole. But they're going to find pass rush via these two guys right here, Nick. The way they utilize them is just exceptional, just elite, front seven, top to bottom.
Barrett Carter and Jeremiah Trotter are two incredible linebackers. Trotter should be one of the nation's best linebackers this year. So excited to see what he can do. Cody McLeod as well is a good rotational piece that could slot in for the two of them there. Trotter at middle linebacker, such a hard-hitting linebacker, great veteran leadership. As a junior, only a junior, has already got good veteran leadership. Such a talented player. Certainly should be drafted in the first round this year. Excited to see what he can do. I want to see him lay down some heavy, hard hits. Certainly get after the quarterback this year.
Look at this Clemson secondary. Some good returning talent for Goodwin to use at his disposal. But these guys really were not good at any point last season. They didn't seem, they gave up 360 late in the year against South Carolina. All the way, 2 months earlier in September, they got eaten up for 6 touchdowns against Wake Forest. This was not a good secondary, I didn't think, Nick. And this is disappointing because they should be a lot better. I think this is where you started to see the impact of Venables departing. I thought they'd be good against Joe Milton in Tennessee because they had their top 2 guys opt out and their quarterback was gone, and they weren't any better. 251 and 3 touchdowns, gave up 68% completion rate. Just a lot of ugly for this secondary. Sheridan Jones, Andrew Wiggins, Nate Wiggins, that is. 2 very good corners, veterans. Wiggins, a lot of people are expecting him to be much better. He was really good over the second half of the season after a very tough game on that September day against Wake Forest. Andrew McCumba was really beat up last year. Certainly didn't live up to the expectations we figured he would. Jalen Phillips is currently the free safety. But I think R.J. Minkins, he's going to be my breakout player of the year in the conference. He has some nice versatility. He's a senior who's going to provide some leadership. I think this is certainly a player you're going to lean on this year. And then you have 2 former high-end recruits in Jaden Lucas and Turiano Pride as backup corners. A lot to work with here in the secondary, Nick, against a veteran receiving core. Who do you think has the edge? Because, again, they really struggled last year. Never really seemed to be in tune for a complete 60 minutes.
I think right now this Duke wide receiving core has the edge against the secondary that I think can come into their own. Wade Woodez as well as a good player. Nate Wiggins, I like him a whole lot. Andrew McCumba is a very talented player. I want to see him break out this year. Jalen Phillips, a nice graduate senior that's involved. Sheridan Jones, another good player. There are a lot of good names here, but we haven't quite seen the talent of them. Wiggins and McCumba, they got to step up for me. They were disappointing last year. I think they're both very talented. McCumba especially, I thought he was going to be the next line of a great list of safeties that come out of Clemson. He has not quite lived up to expectations. He could have a huge year this year. Boomer bust certainly for him.
Look at the Duke defense. Mike Elko arrived in Durham and immediately got to work. They gave about 40 points per game in 2021. The number was down to almost less than 22 per contest this past season. I think there is a lot more coming for them. Get back a good amount of starters here in 8 of those. They were second nationally in forced fumbles. They were 7th in forced fumbles the year prior to that. For some reason, they've always had a knack for forcing turnovers. This defensive line, they don't have an overwhelming size. Jermaine Franklin's the only guy at 300 plus. This is a good defensive line. They're not deep in terms of playmaking or anything. But these 2 guys, and Dwayne Carter and R.J. Oben, are really good tone setters. Carter really excels at finding opposing ball carriers. Some really good strength and leverage. Good at shedding blocks. Oben off the edge has developed into a sturdy pass rusher for them with some nice speed. Certainly want to see him improve in some pursuit, though. But I think this is an edge you're going to be looking for. This Duke defensive line against this Clemson interior. The middle of the defense is a bit of an iffy unit for me. Dorian Masai, a good ball hawking player in coverage. Good pursuit against the run, though, so that's certainly important for them. Camp Dillon. last season as a starter after coming over from Columbia. Has been an effective havoc creator as a pass rusher. No real star talent, I think, in the middle of their defense. Oben and Carter, though, these guys have to play good, and if they don't, they're certainly going to be in for a tough day against the slashing rushing attack.
RJ Oben's a fantastic player coming off the edge. I like him on the left side. Jamon Franklin's a great player. Dwayne Carter's an incredible player at defensive tackle. Vincent Anthony Jr. played a little bit as a freshman last year, steps up as a sophomore potentially this year. I like this defensive line. Has some nice pieces here. I think Franklin and Oben are fantastic. Carter is an incredible piece as well. I like to see them get after the quarterback, make Klubnik uncomfortable.
Yeah, you look at the secondary, they're 105th nationally in passing yards per game allowed. But I certainly think this year they're going to see this part of the defense really step up in that 4.25. Elko is great for him at A&M. Only allowed about 61% completion rating. Gave up 3,300 plus yards. Boston College tore him apart for 330. Drake May had 380. Even Miami was approaching that 300-yard mark. Wake Forest, had a field day as well. Kansas even early on in the season. And then Northwestern, somehow of all teams, have 435 yards against them, Nick. That's just flat out embarrassing. But you're getting a lot of veterans back, including Brandon Johnson, who has just a knack for finding the football. He's great off the edge as the team's leading sack getter. Does a good job fighting through the blocks. He's a real coverage asset in the slot. He wasn't the most polished player, but a good slot blitzer for them. Nice scheme fit here. Miles Jones and Al Blades. These guys enter their 7th and 6th seasons respectively from Power 5 schools. I certainly expect that experience to be big for them. We'll see if they get the start early on in the year. I don't think they will. But they're building up depth and experience here. Jalen Stinson, he was all around a solid defender as one of the top tacklers at safety. The secondary is encouraging. I think they're going to take a sizable leap. None of the returnees, maybe outside of Johnson, who, none of these guys are exactly high-quality cover guys, and they really got shredded in that intermediate range. I'm really expecting scheming here to be big, Nick. I keep harping on it. I think Duke, they're going to have a chance of this upset because this 4-2-5, this secondary behind a great defensive line, they're really going to play a good game just because of what the scheme incorporates against this air raid here. I think they have to be sturdy and short area tackling as well. I think they're certainly going to check those boxes. But, a lot of young players here, but I do have a lot of people coming back. Very helpful for this back end.
I'm excited for this back end as well. There's some young players here. Cam Dillon at linebacker. I want to touch on him quickly. Good player. I'm worried about the linebacking unit, but I think there are some nice players. Nick Morris Jr. could be involved. Joshua Pickett's a good player at left cornerback. Chandler Rivers, another good player. He played as a true freshman last year. He'll be involved as a sophomore. Terry Moore, another sophomore involved. Jalen Stinson's a good player. Brandon Johnson's a nice junior leadership here. Very young unit, but another unit that I think is very talented. I'm excited for this Duke secondary. I think they're a very good unit.
One of the team comparisons, pretty straightforward. I think Duke has every edge on offense, and then defense goes to Clemson. At the quarterback position, Klubnik will be great eventually, but Leonard right now is going to be the much better player. I'd rather have him as my quarterback. At running back, maybe you can make a case for the Tigers with Maffa and Shipley. Those guys are going to certainly be productive, but I think, that trio they have over there in Durham is going to be the edge for me. Wide receiver, this isn't much deep unit in terms of experience and playmaking for the Blue Devils. I like Jalen Calhoun more than I like Antonio Williams, who's the best player for Clemson at pass catcher on the offensive line. I'm going to give it to the Duke as well. And the D-line, I think, Duke's not too much of a slouch there on that part, but they're certainly well behind at linebacker and in the secondary. But again, scheming is going to be big here in this game. So even though they don't have many advantages on that side of the ball, it's something that really play into their favor in this ball game.
I think this is a very interesting tale of the tape. I think this Duke offense certainly wins right now. This Clemson defense wins as well, but I think the Duke defense could be potentially schemed in to be competitive in this game. I'm excited for this matchup. I think this is a very, very interesting matchup with a dominant defense and dominant offense, and just see how it goes.
The final thoughts on the prediction. I'm taking Duke to win. I said it all the way back in April. I think the Blue Devils will win this game. The defense, they showcased ridiculous improvements last year, getting down 18 points per game compared to where they were the year prior. I think the defensive line is going to lead the way for them. And I think scheming is really going to be a big part of that secondary playing well, even if they aren't really stacked in terms of talent. The guys that get back, I think they're ready to take a big leap forward. And Clemson doesn't have much to really expose them unless they're going to make plays in terms of yards after catch abilities or really dominate on the ground. Pursue Leonard all night long for Clemson. I think they'll certainly do that with those linebackers. Need to outwork Duke on the interior. And that really goes for either side because they can certainly make plenty of plays on the boundary. So they have to be extra stout on the interior defensive line. Duke, just be fearless. Take risks. Play strong underneath coverage versus this air raid. A tempo-style offense. I think, Elko's been scheming for this one for months. I'm going to give it to Duke. That's 13-point dog. I think they're going to win outright. And obviously, both of us picking the game, Nick, it's not great. Obviously, we're going to get a lot of hate for that. But this just made sense for me from the jump, and it still does to me all these months later, 2 weeks away from the game. I'm still convinced Duke's going to win, and you're right there with me.
I'm also convinced Duke's going to win. I think it just makes too much sense. I think this offense just has too much talent right now. I think Clemson has too many questions under a new scheme and a total transition. I think the defense will keep it close for Clemson, which is why I have a one-score game. You also have it a one-score game. I think there is a lot of talent on this Clemson defense, and they'll keep them in this game. But I think Duke just has too much going on at home on a Monday night. All eyes are going to be on this game. National attention, large crowd. Mike Elko wants to make a statement for a team that's really talented, underrated, not getting a lot of love in the national media at all. People are really not giving Duke the love they want to give, that they deserve, in my opinion, and your opinion as well. I think Duke wins this game. It certainly is a bit of a trap, us both picking them potentially, but I like this game. I'm confident. I'm excited to see what can happen here.
Yeah, I mean, I just keep going back and go, is this a fair prediction? I'd go, I'm just not happy with the Clemson offense. I don't think it's going to be any better, or at least in week one, than it was last year at Spurs Club, Nick. Again, I think it's going to be great, but here in this start, probably going to make some mistakes. It's going to put them behind the sticks. But that defense for Clemson is going to be something else. I think they have the chance to really limit this Duke offense, but I think there's just too much balance and too much versatility for them to get completely stonewalled. That's me for today's episode. As always, Nick, appreciate you joining me. This will be a great way to wrap up week one, and hopefully our prediction does come to fruition.
Very excited for this game. Cannot wait to see what happens. Great way to end on a Monday night at week one.
Make sure to like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.